Hi, boys and girls. It's Mr. Mack from the Harker School. Today we are going to be talking about simplest form. So when we talk about simplest form, we're worried about fractions and getting them reduced down as low as possible. It doesn't change the value of the fraction, but we want to simplify it. We want to make it as easy to understand as possible. So when we are simplifying our fractions, we are making sure that the greatest common factor of the numerator and the denominator is 1. And some of us might not know what a greatest common factor is. So they go over the greatest common factor down here in example 1. So I'm going to teach that while we go over this. So Angie has a vertical jump height of 12 inches and Holly has a vertical jump height of 22 inches. So Angie's vertical jump is 12/22 of the vertical jump of Holly. Write the fraction in simplest form. So what we do to find the greatest common factor is we list the factors of 12 and 22. So anything that multiplies together to give you 12 and anything that multiplies together to give you 22. So when we look here, we see 1 times 12 is 12, 2 times 6 is 12, and 3 times 4 is 12. Those are all of the factors for 12. And then we look at 1 or 22. 1 times 22 is 22, and 2 times 11 is 22. So we're trying to find the greatest common factor. We're trying to find the greatest number that both of them share as a factor. And in this problem, when we take a look, we see that they both have a 2. Okay, so when we do that, we find the 2. Okay, we are going to use that 2 to divide our numerator and our denominator by it. So down here you see we did not divide 12 and 22 both by 2 to give us 6 and 11. Okay, so when we say 6 and 11, that is 6/11ths. And that means that 12/22 in simplest form would be 6/11ths. Okay, it is still equal. 12 over 22 is equal to 6 over 11, but it's just written in a different way. Okay, and if we're able to use fraction tiles for some of these, you'd be able to see, and we'll try to draw a couple of them just to make you understand that they are still equal. They still cover the same amount, but they are just written a little bit differently. So here's a model down here that we can talk about for shading. When we say shade 12 out of the 22, so that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. That's 12 out of 22. All right. And then when we say to shade 6 out of 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see in this model here, okay, that's given, you realize that they still represent the same amount. It's just written a little bit differently, okay? So some of you think about greatest common factor, and it's a little bit tough for you. Another way to think about simplest form is just divide your numerator and denominator by the same number until there are no more numbers that they can be divided by. All right, so that's just another way you can think about simplest form. So we're going to move on to our next example. So it says write 18/30ths in simplest form. So then it says divide the numerator and the denominator by the same common factor. Continue dividing until the fraction is in simplest form. So it doesn't always have to be the greatest common factor. The idea when you use the greatest common factor is it's quicker. You do it once and you're done and that's it. But like I said before, you can just divide on and on and on until you can't divide anymore. So this example, 18/30ths, in the book they say, well, I know that 2 is a common factor. It's not the greatest maybe, but it's a common factor. All right. So then when I divide, I get 9 over 15. Okay. Now, some of you are looking at it and they're like, okay, well, they're both odd. That's it. That's fine. Except there are still common factors for 9 and 15 that you could be dividing by, okay? So 9 and 15 both have a common factor of 3. So then when you divide, you get a 3 over a 5. And there we think, okay, is there a number that 3 and 5 can be divided by? And there's not. So we need to understand that 3/5 is simplest form. 18/30ths is equal to 3/5. So if I was to draw a picture or a model like we did on that last example, 18/30ths and 3/5 take up the same amount of space. It seems crazy because 18 and 30 are such bigger numbers, but you have to remember when your denominator is 30, is bigger like that, it's just that the pieces are going to be smaller. It takes up the same amount of space, but it's just that the pieces overall are going to be smaller. All right. So let's look down here at our example for 4/6. So we're dealing with a smaller number, right? 4 and 6. And this one, you may not have to sit down and write out all of your factors and just say, all right, 4 and 6. I know it. 4 and 6 can both be divided by 2. So that would give me the answer of 2/3 for simplest form. And then 12 over 2/12, I'm sorry, same thing. You might think, okay, well, 2, you can only be divided by 2 and 1. So I divide them both by 2 and I get 1/6. All right, so then that would give me the answer for what the fraction is in simplest form. All right, so again, so the biggest idea is that make sure that you are dividing the numerator and the denominator by the same number. Okay, it has to be the same number. It could be the greatest common factor, or it could just be any factor until you cannot divide them by the same thing anymore. So we're going to move on to a little bit of practice for you. All right, let me erase my board here. All right, so when we look at this problem here, all of these are just writing in simplest form. It says if the fraction is already in simplest form, just write simplified. All right, I'm going to just put an S today because writing simplified is going to take me way too long. But for you, you would just write simplified, right? Or if you're doing this just in your head, just understand that some of these might be simplified already and some of them may not already be simplified. All right, so 6/8. I know that 6 and 8 are both even, so they both can be divided by 2. So I would say 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay, now the next one, 6/10, same thing. I know they're both even. This is really nice to do when they're all even because any numbers that are even are automatically divisible by 2. All right, so I don't want you just to say, all right, they're even 2, 2, 2, 2. You want to try and find the biggest number they both can be divided by to make your life so much easier. Okay, but 6 divided by 2 is going to give me 3, and then 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. Right, and then 3 and 18. Now, this one we might look at and we might say, ugh, 3 is odd and 18 is even. That they don't have any common factors, but that's not true. Okay, you need to look at this and think to yourself, all right, well, what can 3 be divided by? I like to start with the lower number and then see if that can go into the other ones as well. Well, 3 is a prime number, right? Only factors are 1 and 3. So can 18 be divided by 3? It sure can. 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. 18 divided by 3 gives me 6. All right, so that's just a quick example there of not even numbers, but odd and even. All right, number 6 is the last one we're going to do together, and then I'm going to have you do a couple on your own. So number 6 is 2/5. So then we got to think, okay, what numbers can 2 and 5 both be divided by? So 2 is even, and it's prime, so it only can be divided by 2 and 1. Well, can 5 be divided by 2? Absolutely not. So then this would be in simplest form. Okay, so that's why I put that S there because it's already in simplest form. All right, so what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you try 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. I want you to try all 3 of them. All right, or I'm saying all 5 of them, excuse me. All right, give them a shot. You're going to pause the video, try to put them in simplest form, and when you're done, unpause it, and I'll go over it. And now that you've unpaused it, we're looking at 4 and 16 for 4/16. Now, some of you might have said they're both even. I want to divide by 2, and that's fine. Okay, but again, I want to try and find the biggest number they both can be divided by just to make my life easier. And I know that 4 can be divided by 4, and so can 16. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 16 divided by 4 is 1/4. Now, if you did change this to be 4/16 divided by 2, you would have gotten a 2 and an 8 as your answer. But here's the thing, 2/8 is not in simplest form because they both can be divided by 2, which still gets you to 1/4. So what I'm trying to show you is you can do either way. You can do just by a common factor or the greatest common factor. When you do the greatest common factor, it's just going to be quicker. All right, so 12 and 24. Again, I'm going to choose the greatest common factor. I know both of them can be divided by 12, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get 1/2. All right, 6/25. So I need to think about the factors for 6. Well, it's 1 and 6, and 25 can't be divided by 6. It's 2 and 3, and 25 can't be divided by either of those, so I'm going to say that that is in simplest form. All right, 21 over 30. This one gets a lot of people. If you said this is in simplest form, you're not alone. I promise. There's probably 30 other people watching this today or this summer, and they are having the same problem, right? 21 and 30, we think 21 is an odd number, 30 is an even number. There's nothing that can go into both of them, but there is. Okay, 3. Okay, 21 divided by 3 is 7. And then 30 divided by 3 is 10. So it would be 7/10. All right. And then the last one you had was 4/11. Again, 4. The only factors are 1, 2, and 4. And none of those can go into 11. So that would already be in simplest form. Okay. And then on the bottom here, they just give you a little challenge to try and show you how simplest form can work and making equivalent fractions. Well, how did you get from 28 to 7? You divide it by 4, so you do 8 divided by 4, and that'll give you m equals 2. This one, same thing. How'd you get from 40 to 10? You divide it by 4. Okay, well, how do you get from, so then you do 12 divided by 4, and that gives you b equals 3. All right, and then the last one, how'd you get from 9 to 3? You divide it by 3. So 24 divided by 3 is going to give you 8. All right, so hopefully simplest form was not too difficult for you. If you had trouble with this, maybe rewatch this video, give it a shot. There's also other videos that we have posted before from prior grades that you could also watch to try and get you a little bit stronger with maybe equivalent fractions or just understanding fractions in general. All right, if you need any help, like I said, go back and watch those videos, but there's also going to be links for practice pages and games and videos that you can watch to help try and help you to understand this topic. All right. Best of luck, everyone. Take care.